forth like that.
So how is it like, for example, if you encounter some challenges on the way, there are some rocks coming in, some craters coming in the way, then how do you sort of factor in that and then take corrective measures because there's so much of a lag?
There's two different ways. So depending on what was instructed, the rover has behavior that will protect itself. So if it determines that it has an obstacle that it can't get around, then it'll just stop and then wait for, it will just stop and wait for instruction from Earth. So it just waits. The second is depending on if we have an idea of the type of obstacles, we'll put the rover into a mode where it can assess and identify and choose its path. So there is logic on board to do hazard detection and avoidance and path planning to get around those obstacles if the mission controls has chosen that particular type of driving. It still has safeguards that if it gets too hazardous, it'll stop and wait, but the other hazards it can try to find a path around.
Add on to that, like how are fundamentally moon rovers and Mars rovers different given the different gravitational conditions on both places?
I haven't actually worked on any moon rovers, so I don't think I can answer that in technical detail.
On Moon and Mars, anything on that?
It's
Soil.
similar. I don't know about the soil level, but in the basic structure, in terms of craters and rocks, it's similar. Maybe not identical in the type of structure, but some similarities, yes.
Mars is also a place where there's a lot of dust storms and phenomena like Earth, weather changes and so
yes.
on. So how do you manage the solar panels? How do you manage the sensors? When there's a dust storm coming in and things like that, you have shutters. How do you manage?
So we do have certain mechanisms can be put in a protective mode. So there are some deployables like the mast that it can actually be retracted back. It can be sealed, or like they can be turned and put into a configuration that's like safer, like closing it back up. The Perseverance actually did not have any solar panels. It was a nuclear-powered mission, so it wasn't susceptible to power changes due to solar rays. But we monitor weather on Mars constantly, because not just damage to the hardware, but it also affects communication. The more dust that's in the atmosphere, it's harder to get communication through. So if it gets really bad, we generally just put the rover in a safe mode and let it just sit quietly until the storm passes.
ISRO built by one of the new launched space station of the Andreev station. Any other advice of the NASA?
Could you repeat the question, please?
ISRO built by one of the new space station.
Oh.
It's going to build.
Andreev station.
Okay, ISRO is going to build a new space station.
2035.
Any advice from NASA about the space station? I did not actually work on any space station, especially like any. I've not worked on any human-related mission. I just build robots, so I don't think I can give advice for any human space station.
Women in field of space science and technology, I'm sure when you start taking career things like this, how is it right now? What kind of hardships you face?
Yeah, so women in STEM is a good. We keep promoting women in STEM, and there have been a lot of progress, especially in certain areas in STEM, but we still find that in certain fields, especially those that are much more math-intensive or higher math, it hasn't improved it still has a long way to go in terms of improvement. Throughout my journey still, I've been often one of 10, one of 15 women, either in my classes or in my teams, in the subspecialty that I work in. So the more interdisciplinary the teams get, then the diversity increases there, because we get much more backgrounds helping to fill. So that's been a great improvement over the last 10 years, I would say, that as we get more women in STEM in general, when we work in the interdisciplinary teams, we have much more representation. But we still could go do better in representation for particular fields, especially those that are more math-heavy, to increase that diversity, not just on average in STEM, but across all of the different subfields.
Tell me about AI technology, how you used in Mars.
So artificial intelligence is a spectrum, right? We talk about it now as thinking and as a subfield, but there are aspects of the Perseverance rover that would fall into autonomous. So the entire landing sequence is completely autonomous. So the number of decisions that Perseverance has to make in split seconds is enormous. It has to, decide whether to go right or left, whether to swap hardware. If this thing broke, it needs to use that. All of those decisions are encoded in it, and it has to be like that because the computer can make decisions faster than any person, right? And it needs that speed in order to keep safely in such a critical time window. Even on the surface, Perseverance has features that we call thinking while driving. So as part of autonomous driving, it takes images and processes them and figures out where to put next. So it's somewhat like how we walk, right? When we look at something, we pick up our foot and we put it down, and before we pick up our foot again, we don't stop. It's not like one step, stop, think, one step. We're constantly thinking of where to put the next step. That's what curiosity had to stop and think. So it would take one step, stop, look around, think where to put the next step, and then take the next step. So it was very slow, but Perseverance can actually do more like what we do, where it's constantly imaging, it's constantly thinking of where to put the next step as it's walking. So it's one more step in that direction of artificial intelligence. And it's a spectrum, right? It's not just, I checked a box and this is artificial intelligence. As we learn more of how to do more, we advance on the spectrum of autonomy.
100% utilize the AI?
I wouldn't call it like that because AI is a spectrum, right? It's all about how much can the machine do without input from the person. And there's a wide range of what that means depending on what you want the machine to do, right? You can get a machine to do something, but only if it's pointed this way. You can get a machine to do something in the context of trying to mess it. Like there's so many different ways you can define artificial intelligence that I wouldn't put it that way. I would put it as a spectrum of how autonomous the vehicle is.
As an engineer, what do you think about this? AI is going to change the entire scenario of the space exploration in the future.
So, like I said, I think it's a spectrum, and we're working towards that spectrum. Things that we used to do manually with slide rules and calculators, right? Now we do autonomously on board with the computer. So the same question could have been asked back then of what do they think. As we can put more smarts on board, we can ask more complicated questions. We can get more measurements, and we can, explore deeper into the universe, or use it to unlock ways of exploring that maybe aren't available right now.
So what are the future missions NASA is working on, particularly the Mars?
On particularly Mars. So the next big Mars mission is a program called Mars Sample Return. Perseverance was actually the first leg of Mars Sample Return. So its job was to collect the samples, which it's been doing very successfully. So the next steps would be to get those samples back to Earth. And that's a very challenging program because if you think of how critical landing was for Perseverance, for Mars Sample Return, you have to stack 5 of those critical events in series, and every single one of those has to go correctly before the samples make it back. So you need to launch the next mission. The next mission needs to land successfully. That mission has to have a rocket on board, which then takes the samples, and you have to launch the rocket off the surface of Mars, which has never been done before. And then in Martian orbit, you have to grab the samples while you're in Martian orbit, which has never been done before. And then you have to have that spacecraft leave Martian orbit and come back to Earth, which has also never been done before. And that just gets it close to Earth, and then we can sample. So it's all of these have to work correctly, work right before the samples can get back. So it's a huge program with a lot of moving pieces, challenging pieces with to get the program. So that's the next focus of the Mars exploration.
Could you tell us more on the Artemis mission by both
I don't work on Artemis, I can't talk to that.
Right.
When we will expect human flight Mars?
Yeah, I can't talk to anything human,
What
sorry.
What is your advice to the students community? Because many of the students after completing their higher studies choosing IT field only in India. Not interested research activities and
I think there are a lot of opportunities, but they're not as obvious as maybe the jobs are in the IT field. So my advice to students is to find what their particular passion is and the skills that they're good at, and then actively try to pursue that, which often means doing the research of what opportunities are there, talking with people, trying to work in the field and asking for things, even if the opportunities don't exist, in order to create them, to try to keep working the field, because one step will lead to another, and you never know which step will get you all the way there, but you have to start trying and focus your efforts in line with what you're interested in and passionate about.
You said there's a plutonium-based power source, that's running Perseverance. So why is that night ops were not conducted in that case? Because that's a night source. You don't have to depend on solar power. So why not night ops?
Yeah, so the temperatures get very cold at night. So even though we have
Heater unit should be there.
so we have heater units, but they have ranges. So depending on what we're operating, you decide how to use the energy that you're given, because the RTG provides so much energy during one particular day, and it's spread through the rover and the thermal system. So it's dependent on how you design it. Also, a lot of our operations involves cameras to look at things, and it's really hard to see anything at night. So it makes it hard to. No lighting. Yeah, Perseverance doesn't have a lamp that it shines on. So it uses the natural lighting to do a lot of the imaging and the driving. So it makes it much harder at night.
Conventional night vision does not work over there. I mean, does it? Night vision that works here on Earth doesn't work there.
We just didn't design the rover to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. You'd have to.
He understands Tamil very well.
No, I don't know about very well. I understand some. I understand. Yeah. Is that it? What's that? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
இது ஒரு 172 மாணவர்கள் எல்லாம் விமன் ஃப்ரம் வேரியஸ் காலேஜஸ் 9 காலேஜஸ்லேருந்து பார்ட்டிசிபேட் பண்ணாங்க.
அதாவது மார்ச் 8th இப்பவே அவங்க செலிப்ரேட் பண்ணாங்க. சர்வதேச இன்டர்நேஷனல்
விமன்ஸ் டே. ஸோ ஹி ரெக்வஸ்டட் ஃபார் திஸ் விமன் ரெப்ரசன்டேஷன் நிறையா. ஸோ அதனால வி இன்வைட்டட் ஒன்லி விமன் காலேஜ். அதில் வந்து ஒரு 172 ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸ். இல்லை அவங்க ரெக்வஸ்ட் பண்ணாங்க. ஸோ அவங்க ஷி வாண்டட் டு டாக் அபவுட் ஸ்டெம் அண்ட் how was the journey from Bengaluru to NASA? So அதை நீங்கள் கேட்டிங்களே somebody asked women participation. So you wanted to explore that.
inspiring.
This is also one of our requests, because one of the big focus, as some of you who cover this issue here know, is that there is a large number of women who are graduating in scientific fields, but the actual number of women in the workforce, labor participation of women, is less in India. And it's very important for us to be, we're working very closely with our partners here in India to create opportunities and create safe spaces for women to be part of the conversation. And when you have a mixed audience of men and women, men tend to dominate that conversation. And we'd rather have an area where women have the opportunity to interact and ask the questions that they really wanted to ask. And you saw from this audience today that there were fantastic questions that may not have been asked if there were men inside the room. So it's really important to create these safe spaces so that these future scientists and future leaders and maybe even future space explorers can have the opportunity to meet someone who's already doing just that.
So NASA is giving equal opportunity to men and women? No.
Yes.
Is there any ratio? Nothing like that. Here we can say 30%.
Oh, I don't know the statistics of men and women in the different NASA centers, but it is the diversity and inclusion is a forefront of what NASA is hoping to achieve in their workforce.
Thank you.
Is the private one in this room or is it in another room?
I think we're going to do it here.
We're going to do it here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we just take them out and then call them in at a time? How are we doing it?
Some of them might request an outside.
Oh,
So
an
just to have
outside
a
thing.
different background.
Oh, okay.
Because there's a
We'll
lot
just
of...
check with them. And
Okay.
if you need to take a break, yeah.
I'm good. I will stay here until you tell me
That'll be
where to go.
outside.
Sure, sure.
அப்படியே ரெடி மேடம் போயிடுங்க மேடம் பசங்க வராங்க பாருங்க நிறைய 40 எடுத்துட்டு போய் போங்க அப்படியே மூவ் பண்ணிக்கோங்க